Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we have a review of a very special exclusive LEGO set. This is set number 910023 Venetian Houses, which originated from the Bricklink A-Full Designer Program, which was a program they held back in 2021, which allowed folks to vote with their wallets for making rejected LEGO ideas proposals into sets for the first time. This program was very controversial because while it did give us some of the best sets ever, it also was a lot of money, wasn't available in a lot of regions, and typically made it such that these sets were only available for a few hours or even just for a single day. Stuff like the Pursuit of Flight up there, which was a moving display of different aircraft, as well as the fantastic Castle in the Forest set, which you can see right in the middle there, all originated from the Bricklink Designer Program. And I really do hope that LEGO will do more stuff like it in the future. It was really cool to give these rejected ideas proposals a second life and a second chance to become official LEGO sets. But at the end of the day, these were also very expensive. So of course, at the end of the video, I'll be talking about the value of this particular set, which cost around $280 US. Now, without further ado, I think it's time to jump right into the review of these Venetian Houses. Really interesting to get a large LEGO set based off of this concept. Okay, so here we have the massive Venetian Houses set. As you can see, this barely fits in my review studio because it's essentially two modular building size bases in one. So what we're going to do is review each part of it separately because, to be honest, they basically stand completely okay on their own. They do look really good together. There's a nice little waterway for gondolas to pass under and go through, but for the purposes of the review, let's take a look at them one by one. So what I'm going to do is I will simply separate them out. Thankfully, this does use the same exact kind of setup as most modular buildings, so you can see the Technic pinholes there. And then we can basically just look at each individual section as one block. And there we have it. So starting off with this one, I'm going to set aside the other block, and we can just take a look at this first initial building here, because there is a good amount of stuff for us to look at. So this is kind of the most standard building style of house here, and the first thing you'll immediately notice is that this clearly is built by an A-Full. It doesn't feel like an official LEGO set at all in the way that it's constructed and built, and the design sensibilities, wherein, to be completely honest, the build was not the most interesting, because it was just super repetitive, building the frames for the windows here, having just a plain white wall that basically just used the same exact building processes, and doing almost the same exact thing in the back with the same style of windows. This absolutely was built, and it really did feel like it was built by a mockist who paid more attention to actually having a building that feels very realistic, that could fit in with a ton of other copies of it in one display, rather than having a more interesting building experience. And you know what? I respect that, because we don't really get stuff like this nowadays. Even for the LEGO modular buildings, a lot of things are done to make the building process feel very unique and very asymmetrical, which is always very cool, but there is a time and a place for having just standard buildings like this, and this is a good one to have. Now, of course, things are switched up a little bit in the smaller house, which we'll take a look at later on, but for the most part, for this one here, it is very standard. Now, the cool thing is that this actually has a full interior, so I wasn't quite sure from just the pictures alone, because this was pretty much presented as just as is. We didn't really get many additional images for the set itself, but you can actually open up the roof and the top floor to reveal a library inside, so let's do that right now. I'm going to start off with taking off just the roof here. Now, one thing I do want to note about this is that, again, really does feel like it was built by a mockist because the techniques are pretty simple. I mean, you're really just layering these curved tiles on. It is fairly repetitive, but it looks very good when it's done, and I do really appreciate the inclusion of as many seagulls as possible in the set. They include a whopping 3 of them, which is pretty rare to get in a standard LEGO set. I think the last time we got more than just 1 or 2 was in the actual old fishing store, and the latest Ideas Lighthouse only had 1, so it's good to see quite a few of them, because of course you're going to see flocks and flocks of them when you actually go to Venice. I certainly can remember from the last time I was in Venice a couple of years back, the buildings really did look like this, so that is a really great touch accuracy-wise. I'm going to set aside the roof piece here, so we can take a look at just the interior of the building itself. And to do that, let's just take off this floor so I can actually angle it in. So this floor is pretty basic. It just serves as two people's, I guess, apartments or places to play music. We have a minifigure playing the piano here, which is a really nice, simple build, but I like the inclusion of it. There actually is some interior detail to the piano itself, so that is always nice to see. And then going on to the other side here, we have a minifig playing the saxophone. Now, I actually personally play the saxophone, so it's great to see that. He has a bit of sheet music right there, so you can see him playing his instrument and going off of the music there. But otherwise, nothing really too crazy going on. I mean, there's a bench, there's a clock, but yeah, this is pretty much just empty space for you to build on. The same cannot be said for the ground floor, because when we actually go into the ground floor, this is a full-on library, and there's a lot of stuff going on. First thing I want to do, though, is showcase the back. We actually do have a gondola that is built really well. It is affixed to the studs, but you can always take it off and kind of let it glide along the water here. But going into the library itself, there's a lot going on here, because, oh, let's just, yeah, let the gondola kind of go off on its own, because that is really only attached by one stud. And you can see here that it has a full-on spiral staircase on the interior of the design here, so minifigures can go up the stairs onto the second floor. You have a door on the back with a key in it, as well as a door in the front. And honestly, all around, it just feels like a really cozy space for reading. I mean, look at this guy tucked away in the bookcases there, kind of sitting on the side sofa bits. I kind of want to be this guy and just be relaxing, chilling, reading a book on the side here. And that's what's really cool, because this really does feel like a lived-in space, especially for probably the parts being constrained by having it be through the A-Fold designer program with Bricklink. This really does feel like a fully fleshed out space where you can see the bookshelves on one side, then continuing on to here you have a bit of a rack for newspapers, including some of the newspaper tile prints. And then going on over here, you have even more bookshelves and even a place to check out your books. So let's say you want to put this guy here so he can be manning the front desk and the computer. I tried to make all the minifigures kind of visible from the windows, which is why they're all kind of looking out right now, but you can really see there's a lot of good space inside here that is really useful, and that's one thing I really appreciate about this model in general, is just the amount of good space that you get from it. While the building itself is not the most interesting, it gave me a very unique experience, because nowadays, again, as I said, a lot of the LEGO buildings are very, very complex. They've got a ton going on, and this honestly felt like a return to a more simplistic time. Something like a modular building in, say, 2009 or 2010, where you don't have the craziest building techniques, but you just have a charming, simple building that you can build off of, like this right here. Again, it's not the most interesting of builds, and I did honestly find myself getting pretty bored when just stacking these over and over and over again, but the end result is worth it, and frankly, in real life, there is a lot of repetition to architecture, there's a lot of repetition to buildings, so this is probably the most realistic you're going to get, especially from a modern official LEGO set. But now it's time to take this out and set it aside, and take a look at the other building that's offered, which I would think is a little bit more interesting than the one we just saw. So here's our other model here, and this immediately is a little bit more visually interesting because you actually have a bridge over water. It is a more rectangular building, and there's a docks area. Now, unfortunately, the thing is, the gondola does not go under the bridge. It simply doesn't fit, so that is a little unfortunate. Oh, let me fix up the knocked over pier stands here. That is one thing that's a little bit annoying. These things just tend to fall off really easily, but the gondola, you can kind of park it here, it can be sailing down, but it cannot fit underneath the bridge. And that feels like a bit of a missed opportunity to me, because in Venice there are a lot of bridges that you can actually go under while being in a gondola. There also are a lot of bridges that you can't, so it's not that big of a deal, but it would have been nice to actually been able to go under just to add to the play experience. Still, that being said, this is a really nice build. It just feels very charming to me. You can see some folks taking pictures, probably some Americans over there snapping some photos of some of the Venetians just chilling and fishing. Who knows what the setup is here, but yeah, as you can see, this is kind of a bit more of a fancier building. You've got some ribbons going along the side, and thankfully this does actually adhere to modular building standards, so You can see it has the standard connection points for Technic pins there. It is very nice how that is set up, and that is how this building works. I think personally for me, despite the other building being a lot larger, this one is a lot more fun to me because you can actually have minifigures being posed on the outside and on the docks, which obviously feels very realistic. I like that he has some crates and whatnot to spare here, which is a nice touch to actually have kind of a slice of life going on this LEGO set. Now, of course, similarly to the others, you can remove the roof, which is built using very similar techniques, like so. And we can take a look at the interior. So this is somebody's apartment. You can actually see there is a full-on master bed here, which is very nice with a telephone by the bed. You have a bit of a desk for writing implements and for reading the newspaper, which is nice, including as many printed tiles as possible. And there even is the inclusion of a bookcase here, which is great because that kind of harkens back to the library, which we saw in the other build. Going into the main floor itself, because this is a bit of a smaller thing, this appears to be some sort of an art gallery. So if you go downstairs, there's a lot of what I would call modern art scattered around here. I kind of like how they all form individual faces. I'm not sure if this was intentional or what exactly this is supposed to be, but the way I see it, these are all just little faces that you can see on the artwork itself, just little smiley faces and whatnot. And of course there are a lot of art galleries kind of littered around Venice, so this is super realistic to have an art gallery on the main floor and then someone just literally living on the second floor. That just feels very European to me. It feels very unique for this style of architecture, and that's one thing I really appreciate, is that again, the interior is fully fleshed out, including that spiral staircase which leads to the top. Other than that, there's honestly not too much else I can say about the set. Obviously, this is now very hard to come by. I do just kind of want to briefly talk about the value here, because a lot of people did have comments on the value of these Bricklink A-Fold Designer Program sets themselves. So this cost $290 US, it cost 220 British pounds, and 245 euros in a very rare instance of the prices actually matching up to accurate conversion ratios, especially at the time when this was available for purchase in 2021. Now, the thing is, if you want to buy a new copy of this on Bricklink right now, you're gonna have to spend over $500, because obviously the very limited nature of these builds meant it such that you can't really easily get them outside of that one particular offering. I'm gonna try to get these both on one camera. This literally perfectly fits in my review studio. That was not intentional, but that's pretty cool how the dimensions are perfect. Anyways, the period in which you could actually get these sets was so small. In fact, the sets pretty much sold out all in one single day, making it incredibly hard for folks to get it. They also didn't make these available in every single country. They could only make it available in presumably whatever countries that Bricklink and LEGO had worked out a deal to ship to. Not really sure what the logistics were behind the scenes on that, but ultimately it meant that if you wanted to get these sets, you really had to work for it. I mean, I remember being on the button, refreshing the site constantly, having it constantly crash, as the LEGO site always does, and trying to get my hands on them. LEGO actually messed up and forgot to send me one of these sets, so I had to actually order it secondhand on Bricklink and pay like 3 times the price. They gave me a refund for the set itself, but that wasn't super helpful because now the sets all cost 3 times as much. They also sent me 2 of a smaller set that I didn't order. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes of these. They also took basically a year to get to me. Lots and lots of craziness going on behind the scenes of actually shipping these sets out. And I think all of that factored into making these incredibly exclusive. Now that being said, all of these pieces, by the nature of their builds, had to be built out of existing parts that are easy to come by. Sure, there were a couple of Bricklink A-Fold Designer sets that did actually have custom stickers made for them, so if you want a one-to-one replica of something like the Castle in the Forest, if you do want the stickers, you're a bit out of luck, although LEGO did just make new Forestman stuff. That being said, for this set, at least in this and many of the other sets of this wave, you didn't actually have to get any exclusive pieces for these. They didn't even have an exclusive part to them like the early Bricklink A-Fold Designer program in 2019. You can just go on LEGO Pick-a-Brick and Bricks and Pieces and just buy the individual pieces for the set, and I can guarantee you, you're gonna be spending less than $500, which makes me not feel too bad about the prices, because really, If you want to pay the secondhand prices, you're basically just paying for the box. They don't even have physical instructions. You have to go online to bricklink.com and actually find the PDF instructions there, which to me was a bit of a letdown. I always love physical instructions, and the last AFOL designer program did have them, so kind of a disappointment to not have them for this, but it is what it is. This set is absolutely a very large set, not something that LEGO would actually make today as a standard set for sure. This absolutely feels like it has that AFOL touch to it. For $290, for comparison with... And for $290, comparing this to some of the other modular buildings, yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I mean, it definitely could have been cheaper. I could have seen it being $250, but $290 in today's day and age is definitely something that makes sense to me. And it's really frankly hard to compare this alongside LEGO's other set offerings just because of how different it is and how much of an older style and feel it has to the building experience. $500 is way too much. Don't spend $500 on this when you can buy the pieces for it if you just want to buy the set. I mean, obviously, if you want the box and you want the whole experience of unboxing it, I guess it's just the cardboard box, then yes, maybe that makes sense because of how exclusive it is. But if you just want the model itself, I would highly recommend you just buy the pieces. It's going to be a lot cheaper for you to get all the pieces off of Bricklink or Bricks and Pieces and pick a brick and whatnot. With that though, we have summed up this review of the Venetian Houses, pretty controversial program that LEGO put out, having these rejected ideas sets actually be made into official sets. But hey, I for one am very happy because this is probably the most direct translation of the AFOL designer's work that you're ever going to get for an official set. So that is very, very cool, and I love that LEGO did this. I hope they do it more because so many ideas projects get rejected. It makes total sense for there to be an avenue to get them outside of the standard ideas process. Alright, and with that we have summed up our review of this particular set, 910023 Venetian Houses. Let me know down in the comments below if you were able to pick up a copy of the set for yourself, and even if not, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And most importantly, do you feel like it is worth the price? Although, if you want to get it today, be prepared to shell out close to $500 US on Bricklink. So, I guess regardless of whether or not they wanted to price it at a particular range, it was definitely going to go up to, right now, it's even double what it originally cost. Of course, this is the largest of the Round 2 Bricklink AFOL Designer Program crowdfunded sets. It was a blast to build, and I can't wait for Round 3 to arrive. The US does tend to get these sets a little bit late from what I experienced. I know that Europe and Asia got these particular sets, I believe around the summer of 2022. I personally had to wait basically a full year before pre-ordering to getting this, so we'll see. The Round 3 sets will arrive when they arrive, but I'm very happy that LEGO did this program, and hopefully they'll do it in the future because there are so many rejected LEGO Ideas proposals that I feel would make fantastic sets, but just never really got a chance. With that, we've summed up this review. Thank you all so much for tuning into Dr. Bricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye-bye for now.